know, Johnny, I've never been to Las Vegas.
You've never been there yourself?
I've played all around the country over there, and I've never been to Las Vegas. I was kind of afraid of it, too. I was afraid I might get involved with some, well...
They called Jim Reeves the smoothest voice country music had ever heard, a man whose songs felt calm, comforting, and timeless. At the peak of his fame, when hit records were pouring out of Nashville and his future looked limitless, Jim boarded his small airplane believing it would be a routine flight home, but he never made it. Somewhere in the dark, storm-filled skies, something went terribly wrong. For decades, his sudden death remained wrapped in mystery, leaving fans heartbroken and full of unanswered questions. Now, 50 years later, the truth behind that tragic flight is finally coming into focus, revealing how a voice that seemed destined to last forever was silenced in a single devastating moment. Jim Reeves was born James Travis Reeves on August 20th, 1923 near Galloway, Texas, and grew up in a quiet farming community in East Texas. He was the youngest of 9 children, and his life changed early when his father died less than a year after his birth. Raised by his mother, Reeves learned responsibility and humility at a young age, qualities that later showed in his calm, sincere singing style. His love for music began by accident. When he was 5, he heard a phonograph playing at home and was amazed that music could come from a small box. That moment stayed with him. Soon after, he received an old guitar and taught himself to play by listening to the radio and records. He was especially inspired by Jimmie Rodgers, whose emotional storytelling left a deep mark on him. Singing came naturally to Reeves. He never forced it and simply enjoyed performing, believing that if he liked what he was doing, others might too. For a while, music was not his main goal. He was also a talented baseball player and even attended college on an athletic scholarship, hoping for a sports career. An injury ended those dreams, and music slowly became his true path. Reeves also admired smooth pop singers like Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra, which shaped his clean, relaxed vocal style. By the time Jim Reeves began working in radio and performing publicly, his sound was already formed, rooted in childhood wonder, self-taught skill, and a natural love for music that never felt forced. Jim Reeves's professional career unfolded gradually, shaped by persistence, reinvention, and an instinctive understanding of how to connect emotionally with listeners. His earliest steps into the music business were modest and uncertain. After leaving college and abandoning his hopes of a sports career, Reeves worked a variety of jobs before finding steady employment in radio. In the late 1940s, he became a disc jockey in Shreveport, Louisiana, where he hosted country music programs and sang live on air. At this stage, he was still performing under the name Jim Sonny Boy Reeves, adopting the lively, high-energy style that was popular among country singers of the era. Reeves began recording in the early 1950s, but initial success was limited. His early records reflected the honky-tonk sound of the time and failed to distinguish him from many other singers competing for attention. While he was gaining experience, commercial breakthroughs remained elusive, and several of his early recordings went largely unnoticed. This period tested his patience and confidence. Yet it also pushed him to reconsider his musical direction. Reeves gradually realized that his true strength lay not in flashy delivery, but in the natural warmth and smoothness of his voice. The turning point came in 1957 with the recording of Hell Have to Go. The song, written by Joe and Audrey Allison, was deceptively simple, built around a quiet, intimate vocal performance. Reeves delivered the song as if he were speaking directly to one listener, letting pauses and restraint carry the emotion. That understated approach set it apart immediately. The song became a massive hit, reaching #1 on the country charts and crossing over to the pop charts as well. Almost overnight, Jim Reeves was no longer a struggling radio singer. He was a national star. He'll Have to Go did more than bring success. It reshaped Reeves' career identity. He abandoned the Sonny Boy persona and embraced a smoother, more refined vocal style that would come to define the emerging Nashville sound. Unlike the rougher honky-tonk singers of the time, Reeves sang with calm authority and emotional subtlety, appealing not only to traditional country fans, but also to mainstream audiences. This crossover appeal was key to his rapid rise in popularity. Following his breakthrough, Reeves enjoyed a remarkable run of success throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s. He recorded hit after hit, including Four Walls, Billy by You, Welcome to My World, Am I Losing You, and Adios Amigo. His records sold in huge numbers not only in the United States but internationally, particularly in South Africa, the United Kingdom, and parts of Europe. His smooth baritone voice transcended language and cultural barriers, making him one of the first truly global country music stars. With stardom came extensive touring and television appearances. Reeves became a familiar face on popular programs and headlined major venues. Despite his success, he maintained a calm, gentlemanly public image that contrasted with the excess often associated with fame. He was known for his professionalism, quiet confidence, and meticulous attention to his recordings. In the studio, he demanded clarity and emotional honesty, often recording multiple takes to achieve the precise tone he wanted. Yet, Reeves's career was not without challenges. The pressure of maintaining success in a rapidly changing music industry weighed on him, and the demands of constant travel were exhausting. He also faced moments of frustration when artistic decisions clashed with commercial expectations. Even so, he continued refining his sound, pushing country music toward greater sophistication, without losing its emotional core. By the early 1960s, Jim Reeves had reached the height of his stardom. He was no longer just a hitmaker. He was a defining figure in country music's evolution. His influence could be heard in the work of countless singers who followed, many of whom adopted his smooth phrasing and polished delivery. Tragically, his life and career were cut short in 1964 when he died in a plane crash while piloting his own aircraft. Jim Reeves's love life was quiet, deeply private, and remarkably steady, especially when contrasted with the public nature of his fame. At the center of it was his lifelong relationship with Mary White Reeves, a woman he married long before success arrived and who remained his emotional anchor throughout his career. Jim met Mary White in the mid-1940s while both were living in Texas. At the time, Jim was far from being a star. He was working various jobs, still unsure of his future, and carrying the weight of responsibility that had shaped him since childhood. Mary was drawn not to ambition or polish, but to Jim's calm nature and sincerity. Their relationship developed naturally, without drama or spectacle, grounded in mutual respect and shared values rather than excitement or status. They were married in 1947, years before Jim Reeves became a household name. This timing was important to both of them. Mary later emphasized that she married Jim for who he was, not for what he might become. In her words, "I married Jim Reeves when he was just Jim Reeves, not a singer, not a star." That distinction mattered deeply to her, and it defined their relationship. Fame entered their lives later, but it never became the foundation of their marriage. Jim himself spoke with rare openness about how much Mary meant to him. Though he was a reserved man, he acknowledged her role in his life and career, saying, "I've never made a move in my life without first talking it over with Mary." At one point, controllers warned him about the intensity of the weather ahead. Reeves acknowledged the warnings, but he continued his approach, likely believing he could safely fly through the conditions as he had done before. What happened next unfolded quickly and fatally. The aircraft entered an area of intense turbulence and poor visibility near Brentwood, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. Investigators later concluded that Reeves likely became spatially disoriented in the storm, a dangerous condition where a pilot can no longer accurately perceive the plane's position, altitude, or movement. In heavy clouds and rain without a clear horizon, even experienced pilots can lose control in seconds. The plane descended rapidly and crashed into a wooded area. The impact was catastrophic, killing both Jim Reeves and Dean Manuel instantly. Reeves was only 40 years old. The news of his death spread rapidly and stunned fans, fellow musicians, and industry professionals. Many found it difficult to believe that someone so calm, polished, and seemingly invincible could be gone so suddenly. His wife, Mary Reeves, was devastated. Jim had left home that day expecting to return, and there had been no indication that anything was wrong. The finality of the loss was compounded by the fact that there was no prolonged illness, no warning, no goodbye. In the aftermath, official investigations determined that the crash was caused by severe weather conditions rather than mechanical failure. There was no evidence of recklessness. Instead, it was a tragic convergence of confidence, experience, and unpredictable weather. Reeves's familiarity with flying may have contributed to his decision to proceed, trusting his skills in conditions that ultimately proved overwhelming. The emotional impact of his death was profound. Radio stations interrupted programming to announce the loss. Mary found comfort knowing Jim's music had helped people through difficult times, but she still chose to grieve privately. With no children to carry his name forward, Mary became the sole guardian of his memory. She believed that as long as Jim's music lived on, a part of him always would, and that belief stayed with her for the rest of her life.